And boy, do I have good news for you guys.
Good news? What good news?
Are you guys ready for it?
Economy?
Yeah, John, you ready for it? All right, here we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
Down goes Donald Trump. Down goes Donald Trump. Down goes Donald Trump. Joe Biden, ex-president of the United States of America. Oh, that is a relief. Oh, thank God. So it's over. Now, let me give you the details. Overnight, Joe Biden, the president-elect, took the lead in Georgia. And this is the best part of all. The district that gave him the lead was John Lewis's former district. Makes you believe in prayer a little bit. Biden will likely win Arizona, and some exit polls indicating it is because of anger in Arizona over what he said about John McCain. So, by the way, that's John McCain twice against Donald Trump on Obamacare and now this. So, who's the sucker and loser now, Donald Trump? Okay, I'm not a McCain fan, but that's a nice piece of poetic justice. And then Biden also took the lead early this morning in Pennsylvania. And the reason why we've called the election and Decision Desk HQ has called the election is because it's over. All the remaining districts in Pennsylvania, Georgia, and Nevada are overwhelmingly Democratic. So Biden will definitely win those 3 states, let alone Arizona, which is half called. And John, if all of that happens, as is very likely now, Joe Biden will have 306 electoral college points. And from what I hear from Donald Trump, that's a landslide, because when he got 304 electoral college points, he said it was an overwhelming landslide, like no one's ever seen before. So I guess he lost like no one else has ever seen before.
To a sleepy guy too, campaigning primarily from his basement, he lost. Yeah, it's gonna be amazing. And also the particular areas that are going to deliver this win. I mean, you pointed out one, but the fact that it's also, it's gonna be Detroit. 2, it's gonna be Philly. It's gonna be just Atlanta. All of this is awesome. It feels a little bit like karma. It doesn't necessarily make me want to pray, but it does want to make me think a little bit more about karma. The only karma we would have had more and we were denied, this is just purely talking from karma, is if hypothetically the guy that had called COVID a hoax had actually died from it. That's just purely from karma's point of view. Obviously, we don't wish that on anyone. But we were denied that, but we did get this, and that is certainly not nothing. It is weird just for a second. Like if you had told us a year and a half ago, we would be cheering, Joe Biden wins. We would have had a hard time believing that for multiple reasons, but we don't dwell purely in some hypothetical perfect world. We dwell in the real world, and we'll take real victories when they really happen. And this is 100% a victory.
Well, John, that leads to 2 other points. One is that if you had told us a year and a half ago it's going to be a super tight election, first of all, I would have had a heart attack at that point. Because I had always believed that Trump was going to get blown out, and in the electoral college, as a matter of slight chance, he will be, but in reality, we know he wasn't, right? And so not in the terms of, now, by the way, Biden has a 4 million person lead in the popular vote, but it's still not a blowout, it's 2.5%. And so whereas we were expecting something historic like 8%, and that obviously didn't happen. But if you had told us a year and a half ago, it's gonna be a really close race and Georgia will decide it.
Yeah.
I mean, the heart attack, stroke, it's over. Oh my God, move to Canada before they build the wall, etc. But it turns out, no, Georgia decided it for the Democrats. And how is that for a twist of events?
Well, and Cenk, imagine if we had talked a year ago and someone had said, oh, it's gonna be a nail biter, but you might have a shot, even though Trump will still be in the middle of presiding over a pandemic response that will kill half a US civil war of American citizens, it's still gonna be a nail biter.
Yeah, I mean, by the time this is over, it's going to be around 100 9/11s. And still, it was a nail biter.
But between now and Inauguration Day, it'll be another Vietnam.
Still, it was a nail biter. So we'll get to the anger later.
Yeah,
in just a little bit. And we'll get to the future in just a little bit. But let's celebrate a little bit longer. First of all, if you haven't seen the shirt I'm wearing, you're gonna love it. So here, I'll stand up a little bit. You're fired. Okay, that's his catchphrase.
It is a good catchphrase.
Yeah, well, it's perfect for now. ShopTYT.com. Okay. So, by the way, now I'm a little worried they're going to sell out because as soon as I put this on in the morning, everyone's like, yes, that. Okay. ShopTYT.com. Oh, it's an awesome design. God bless Carlos. All right. Now, to your point about Philly, I mean, they just can't stop, John. They all night on Fox News, on Twitter this morning too, talk of like, oh, Philly, you know how corrupt Philly is. First of all, there's a lot of votes coming in for Biden from Pittsburgh too, but there's no talk of Pittsburgh being corrupt. What's the biggest difference between Philly and Pittsburgh? And then they're like, also Detroit is corrupt. Also Atlanta is corrupt. Okay, they're so brazen, they're so over the top with their racism. And so they just say Philly's corrupt with, of course, as usual, no evidence. Even a Fox News reporter today said there is no evidence of fraud in Pennsylvania. And so the president is not correct about that. And the funny thing about Fox News is you got to catch them live. Don't ever watch them, by the way. Okay, but what happens is sometimes a reporter or even an anchor won't get the memo yet because the event is happening right there, and they'll be in location as that reporter was in Pennsylvania, and they'll accidentally tell the truth, and they'll say, no, there's zero evidence of fraud, none whatsoever. Then everybody gets the memo, and then a couple hours later, they're like, well, the jury's not in yet on lack of fraud, and it's certainly possible. Everybody knows it's possible, and then everybody will shift to that talking point, and obviously they called Arizona, and then everybody's like, no, and the memo got delivered too late before they called it. So thank God for that.
Jake, we have some breaking news.
No, let's do it.
Well, actually, we have two pieces of breaking news. The first is that the video clip that has been going around showing CNN anchors accidentally going to Pornhub on one of their things, that turns out to have been edited. I know, I'm as shocked as everyone. But anyway, no, that's an actual story that needed to be fact checked. No, the actual breaking news is that 61,000 new Maricopa County ballots have been added. So of those 61,000, Trump has won the majority. He has got 53%, which you might be led to believe means that improves his chance of winning Arizona, but that's actually not on pace for him to catch up and surpass Joe Biden, which doesn't mean he's not gonna happen, but it just became that much more difficult because those 61,000 votes didn't do it for him. He would need to overperform even more in the remaining smaller number of ballots to win. So it's looking more and more likely that Joe Biden is not only going to win, but it's not gonna be that really tight electoral college victory that could in theory allow a few faithless electors to overthrow the entire thing.
Yeah, actually, and I've got news on that too, which is very important. But let me stay on Arizona for a second. That gives me much more assurance that Arizona is going to go to Biden because Maricopa County is more Republican, and so that's why. Funny enough, if I have a sense that the election is over, I'm not shy about it. But I told you just right in the beginning here, I said it in the morning and I've said it throughout. But specifically this morning, Georgia and Pennsylvania and Nevada are definitely going to Biden. But I have not mentioned Arizona, and throughout I didn't say that Arizona was definite, even though Fox and AP have already called it. But that's because we're rational and we look at the remaining areas and the remaining votes and how likely is it to go in one direction or another. So we knew that Trump would be picking up votes in Arizona. We just didn't know how many. That's why I wasn't comfortable saying that Biden's gonna win Arizona. I'm more comfortable now. I'm not all the way there yet, but that's excellent news that Trump only picked up 53% of the remaining votes. That means he is very unlikely to catch Biden in Arizona overall. And as things stand now, Biden has a 1.4% lead in Arizona. That's 43,779 vote lead, which is a lot for a state the size of Arizona. And now 92% are reporting it had been at 88 and 89 for a long time. So Trump's window is closing in Arizona, which would make it 306 electoral votes for Biden if he gets that, and I'm right about the other states.
Can I just throw out one extra thing? And this is, I know we're celebrating and everything. Obviously, there were problems with the polls, and those are going to be dissected and everything. But I'm thinking that as the days have gone on, the apparent issues with the polls are not as significant as people were saying on Tuesday. Like, obviously, I'm not a huge defender of Nate Silver or anything, but in terms of their projections of how the states would shake out, the states they had him winning based on the polls to get to 270, he has won or will win every single one of those, and even a few that he didn't need that they projected to go blue. There were a few that were leaning blue that he won't have won, but I think the only state that he had a narrow lead in the overall polling that they expected he had like a 55% chance of winning in was probably Florida, maybe North Carolina. And that's really it. I mean, look, the polls were clearly off. Remember, polls are always going to be off by some amount. And certainly there are areas of the country where they were more off. But in terms of the overall national numbers and the state numbers, they weren't off by like 8% or 10% or anything apocalyptic like that. And in terms of, if you were to look the day before the election at the state level polls and make your electoral college predictions accordingly, you would have been pretty on track with the way the polls looked the day before the election, from what I'm seeing at least.
Yeah, I disagree. And
I'm looking at it right now.
No,
he won all the states they said he would win.
I know, I understand that, but John, it's not just whether he wins; it's the size of the victory. And so, in terms of who's going to be president, it is just who wins the states. That's clear, right? But we're talking about whether the polling was right. And you can go back to our swing state voter guide on tyt.com/investigate. So if you're on the website, just hit stories and you'll see it. And you'll see that what the final average of polls was in each of those states. For example, Wisconsin, he was supposed to win by 8 and he won by 0.6. That's not a little off. 7.5 points is well outside the margin of error. And you go down the list and they're off by 8 points in a lot of states. So it's not just that, hey, they got Florida wrong, but hey, they got Pennsylvania right. No, Pennsylvania was supposed to be a much larger lead. Michigan was supposed to be a near 10-point win. And what did he win by, 1, 2 in Michigan? Here,
almost 3. And again, I know I'm not going to convince you, but it is in the middle of a pandemic, and trying to figure out what a likely voter is when we simultaneously have the biggest set of early votes, the biggest set of mail-in ballots, weeks for people to find out about how things are trending in terms of turnout and then act accordingly. I'm not saying that necessarily explains why some of the polls were off by as much, but that certainly makes it more difficult than any polling situation we've had in a presidential election before.
Yeah, I understand, but also look, there's two, in my opinion, the two camps are, I hate to say it, but they're both wrong. Okay, so I would put you in one camp and Anna in the other camp, and
the
then call
important thing
you
is we're both wrong.
Okay, so like there's the Anna camp roughly described as screw the polls, they're wrong. I don't want to ever hear about them again, right?
Oh, I can't wait to hear
and
this.
I think that that's wrong because the science of the polls is not wrong. The assumptions in the polls are apparently wrong, in my opinion, right? So the science can be great. Are they statistically representative of the people that they are polling? Yes. There's nothing wrong with the science. Math is still math, numbers are still numbers. At the same time, I think just because the science of it is correct doesn't mean the assumptions are correct. And so when I see the polls being off by 7 points, you've got to acknowledge that and say so that you can make the polls better, so that you could have the assumptions be correct next time. And obviously, it'll take a long time for pollsters to regain their credibility with the American people, and so we'll get there before they do. If the pollsters wind up being right in the next set of elections, et cetera. So they've got to improve them. They really do. This was there was, at least can you acknowledge this, John? Too many states where the miss was too large.
Am I not merciful? Yes, I can acknowledge that.
Okay, all right.
And you know what? I can acknowledge it so much that we don't even need to define the group I'm in that's wrong. We can just go back to celebrating if you want.